Hello. After listening to the lectures, I think that it is abundantly clear that the city of Jakarta would benefit greatly from participating in some of the techniques, tactics, and designs described in the learning material. The most obvious has to do with energy and transportation. Jakarta has some of the worst air pollution on the planet. This is largely due to two practices, one being Jakarta's over-reliance on fossil fuel-based energy production located near the city. Transitioning towards green energy production, whether it be solar farms or solar panels on rooftops or offshore wind energy production, would be costly but effective at reducing air pollution and carbon emissions made by Jakarta. The other key contributor to air pollution has to do with the over-reliance of automobiles in dense and high-traffic city. Investing in pedestrian or biking infrastructure, developing an expansive public transportation system, and promoting electric vehicle use would extremely reduce air pollution and emissions, contributing to climate change as well as reduce the terribly managed traffic within the city. Although these solutions are effective, the transition towards a more biophilic green city design would have major benefits across a range of Jakarta's issues. One of the biggest issues facing Jakarta has to do with its major flooding occurrences, polluted water, and subsidence due to groundwater depletion. One factor that contributes to the magnitude of flooding has to do with the total lack of permeable ground within the city. Everything is concreted over, and the water that flows through the city during flood events has nowhere to go. Expanding the amount of green spaces and permeable ground within the city would help ease the burden of flood management by allowing the water to be absorbed by the ground and landscaping. This would also help the cause by restoring groundwater reserves and preventing further subsidence. Due to the rapid and sprawling urbanization of Jakarta, nearly 90% of the wetland habitats in and around the city have been destroyed. Wetlands are one of the most important landscapes at fighting the effect of climate change and protecting the environment. Wetlands are incredibly important as they provide an important service of improving water quality and storing water runoff during flooding events. Restoring wetlands habitats in some parts and developing wetland habitats outside the city would greatly reduce the water pollution and be an important asset to absorbing and storing large volumes of water that can be intentionally redirected outside the city during flooding events. This would recharge the groundwater and provide a habitat for the biodiverse plant and animal species that had inhabited the area prior to the city development. These wetlands could be parks and preserves as ways to provide recreation opportunities, increase environmental stewardship, and prevent the extinction of native species and maintain the habitat for generations to come. These are just a few of the benefits that wetlands provide. Similar to developing wetland preserves, the inclusion of public parks and green spaces are incredibly important due to the fact that resource consumption and development have destroyed much of the surrounding forest, not just the wetlands. Another major threat to the well-being of Jakarta is the urban heat island effect. Biophilic and green design would work to drastically reduce the impact of said effect. This is due to the fact that plant material reflects solar radiation rather than absorbing it, like concrete and other building materials. One great tactic is rooftop gardens, which reduce heat island effect, provide passive food production for inhabitants, improve biodiversity, and support pollinators. Another is simply the inclusion of tree canopies within the city. They provide shade, which reduces ambient temperature and can minimize electricity usage for cooling during summer months. One way to improve walkability and bikeability is to provide green corridors and comfortable spaces, with trees being the best method. You could designate certain roads as automobile traffic with infrastructure dedicated to public transit, such as streetcars or bus systems. Then you can create green corridors that serve as walking and biking paths around the city with public parks connected to them. Other than the multitude of physical, ecological, and environmental benefits that this kind of design provides, an impact that is just as important has to do with the mental health of inhabitants. Human beings are not biologically meant to live in concrete manufactured spaces. We come from natural world and still have a connection to it regardless of all the ways that we try to separate ourselves from nature. The inclusion of green spaces and biophilic design can improve mental health passively through its presence and actively through recreational use. There are tons of different biophilic design opportunities in every city. Some can be costly or difficult to implement due to the pre-existing urban form, but each is an option.